What's the word, good friends? I am your tax instructor, Sean of Fundamental Tax Solutions, and this is my first tax office vlog. Today, we're going to be talking about the Taxpayer Protection Program, and that is the department that issues out the letters to have you verify your return for the Internal Revenue Service. But since this is my first tax office vlog, I felt it's only right that I give you a little background on my tax preparation and advisory journey. I first learned and began preparing taxes back in 2009, and I learned at H&R Block, and that's back when they used to give you these thick old books, and we learned how to do tax returns by hand, pencils, calculators. We did not use a computer or any type of tax software. We went to class on Tuesdays and Thursdays in person, and they expected for you to have that homework done the next day or the next class. And this was back when H&R Block would only hire you if you scored high in those classes. If you weren't like the top 5 people in that class, they weren't interested in having you in their tax office. I think they're a whole lot more lax these days. After that, I worked for the Internal Revenue Service for 7 years, where I was an advanced accounts representative and a subject matter expert in tax law, or what they would call a SME. So that means like them holy rollers be thumping the Bible, I thump publications, instructions, and the Internal Revenue Service manual. So I build my platform on accuracy and documentation. And what I mean by documentation, I mean publications, instructions, and the Internal Revenue Service manual, and not how I feel. I know some people like, well, I had experience in this and this and that. Well, I worked on the inside, good friend, and this is how the Internal Revenue Service looks at it. So it's not my opinion. None of this is how I feel. I'm never going to tell you how I feel. I'm just going to give you this other perspective so you can get a better understanding of what's taking place after you submit that tax return. So let's get into it with this Taxpayer Protection Program. So the first thing I want to let you all know is that this program is not new. It began in 2015 where they started requiring hundreds of thousands of taxpayers each year to verify their tax returns, which is a fairly simple process for the most part. You can be selected for this program for a couple of different reasons. If you are a first-time filer, it's very likely that you're going to have to verify your tax return. If you haven't filed in several years and then you file a tax return claiming a refund, it's very likely that you will have to verify. Some people are randomly selected for verification, and then we have the demographic of individuals whose tax returns may have triggered the Internal Revenue Service system, which requires the Internal Revenue Service to verify. Like it or not, it is a part of their job. Just like when the police officers sit on the side of the road with their little clicker and try to find who's speeding. I don't like that part of their job, and I'm sure there's a lot of y'all who don't like this part of the Internal Revenue Service's job. But like I said, it's fairly simple process. The most complicated part about it is it does cause delays in your processing. They send out 3 different letters. The 5701C, that is a very common letter. It's the one they send out most often. It allows you to verify online. It has a 14-digit code in that letter that's required. And when I say online, I mean in the Internal Revenue Services on their website. So you will have to set up an account with ID Me. And then once you go through that process, then you'll be able to access your IRS information, your records. You'll be able to see any balances due. You can access your transcripts. And for all my transcript warriors, you know what I'm talking about. Okay? That's how a lot of people track their refunds these days, is they look at the codes on the account transcript. Which, like I said, that's the most common way that they do it. Waiting for the letter is probably the most complicated part about it because we have to exercise patience. All right. The next letter is the 4883C. That's the letter they normally send out if you request for them to reissue that letter because you didn't receive it. With that letter, you can't call into the Internal Revenue Service to verify over the phone. But you will need to have the letter because you need that 14-digit code. The 14-digit code is a part of verifying, okay? And then the other one is the 5747C. Now, this letter requires you to go into the office. So you don't have the option to do it online, and you don't have the option to do it on the phone. they want to see you face to face down at the Taxpayer Assistance Center to do the verification process. Usually, if you have to go into the office, that's probably the one situation where you don't have to have the letter. And that's because they're going to see you face to face and they have the opportunity to look at your ID, which they can't do on the internet and they can't do over the phone. But you probably will, or I'm not going to say probably, you're going to need that current year tax return that they're requesting to verify, and possibly a prior year tax return as well. Okay? Because they're going to ask you some questions off the tax return, what's on certain lines, and may have you, verify the direct deposit account that the refund is going to be going into. And it's really that simple. After that, whether you do it online or you do it over the phone or you do it in the office, after you complete the verification process successfully, the time frame is the same, 9 weeks for processing. And that's because before you verify, the Internal Revenue Service is not doing anything. They put a stop to the processing of your tax return and they're waiting for you to verify. So if you never verify, they're never going to process that tax return. And then once you do verify, then they begin that processing. When you complete verification, do not mistake when they say that it was successful, everything is good, is that the Internal Revenue Service agrees with your tax return. Because like I just stated, at this point, your tax return hasn't processed. So they're not in agreement with it. I'm not saying that they don't agree with it. I'm just saying successfully verifying does not mean automatic agreement. Okay? It just means that you have successfully verified, and that is it. Once your return begins processing, then if there are any other issues that come about, then you can be selected for a review. You can be selected for an audit. Basically, the Internal Revenue Service can then at that point question what is actually on the tax return. So don't be confused about that. There are a lot of people who verify and update directly to an 846. A lot of the times, because I did get my social media start on TikTok. So if you are not following me from TikTok, then go on over there and check it on out. But a lot of people ask me, does it take the whole 9 weeks? With the Internal Revenue Service, you have to be mindful of how to interpret their time frames. They said up to 9 weeks. They didn't say it guaranteed 9 weeks. But time frames are going to vary because everybody's situation is different, okay? Even if it looks similar, everybody's situation is different. You can verify on the same day as your neighbor. They can update to an 846, and you can update to a 570. A refund being issued is not the only type of update the Internal Revenue Service considers. So if you do update to a 570, which is a hold on your refund and a review of some sort, because there are different type of reviews, there are different departments that can put a 570 on your account transcript, and we'll talk about that in another tax office vlog. But that's going to cause your time frames to vary. Now, I have seen some people update with their codes or with the 846 within anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. With mentioning that, I do also want to tell you, so like I said previously, when you before you verify, they're not doing anything with your tax return. So the first thing that you are going to see once your transcript begins updating is you're going to see those initial codes on your account transcript. That means the 150, which represents the tax return itself. If you had federal withholdings coming out of your sources of pay, you'll see the 806. If you claim the additional child tax credit or education credits, you'll see the 766. And if you claim the earned income credit, you'll see the 768. If you notice, I consider those to be initial codes, not good codes. And I'm not saying that they're not good, but you should already be aware of those codes because those amounts that you see next to it, that came from your tax return. That's literally the information that you submitted on your tax return to the Internal Revenue Service. That's literally what it is. So it's not good or bad. It's what you sent to the Internal Revenue Service. All right. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, you update to that 846. If not, and you get a 570, or if you already have an 810, which around here is a red flag. I don't care what the internet tells you. 810 is nothing nice, and it's probably your worst enemy. If you already have an 810, you need to keep in mind that verifying is not about to make that 810 magically go away. That is a separate situation. Okay? It is likely that you are being required to verify because something on your tax return triggered that 810. So they want to take identity theft off the table. That's what they want to do. With the 810, something on your tax return triggered their indicators in their system that there's possible identity theft or some sort of possible frivolous claim or fraud. So verifying basically just is you accepting responsibility for the tax return so they can take identity theft off the table and then get to what it really is on the tax return that they're questioning that would cause that 810 to pop up. But outside of that, if everything is accurate and everything is correct, the most inconvenient part is that you'll be waiting an extended amount of time, longer than a normal time, especially if you were on PATHAC and you filed extra early. You've already been waiting since January, so it's gonna prolong that process a little bit, but you'll still get your refund, unless you got something on there that don't belong. And then that's a different story for a different tax vlog. If y'all want to hear about any of these topics, then go ahead and drop it in the comment. I do respond to those of you all who leave comments. So whatever issue you're having, whatever situation you're currently in, drop it in the comment section and let's talk about it. I talk about it in vlogs. Meet me over on the TikToky, and I do live sessions over there. And I guess I'll start doing live sessions over here too. So that's pretty much it with the Taxpayer Protection Program. Very simple process, a little inconvenient when it comes to the timing, and they're going to do it next year. Can't promise or say that you won't have to do it next year. Taxpayer Protection Program verification is only attached to that tax return, the one that you're verifying for. It doesn't carry over from year to year. So because you verified this year, there is no absolute guarantee that they won't ask you to verify next year. We're going to hope that they don't, but nothing promises you that you won't because you verified the previous year. Doesn't work that way. Now, that's the end of that rant or vlog. I don't know. This is my first time. How did I do? Let me know. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see y'all next time.